Welcome to episode 18 of the One Small Change podcast. On today's show, we have Anna Williamson, a celebrated TV and radio broadcaster, #1 best-selling author, podcaster, life coach, and Master NLP practitioner. Anna is an absolutely fascinating individual who, after already having a successful career on national TV, on ITV, Nickelodeon, the Disney Channel, was behind the scenes struggling herself with such severe anxiety that she was one day unable to continue filming. Her story is one of incredible strength, taking this diagnosis not as a career finisher, but as a career starter. And wanting to help others in the same situation, Anna trained as a certified counsellor, life coach, and master NLP practitioner. And since then, Anna has gone from strength to strength in her career, become one of the mainstays of national TV and radio. And like a few of our previous guests, Anna is one of the hosts of Celebs Go Dating. She's also a celebrated author of three books, on managing anxiety, managing parenting, and also anxiety for children, which is an awesome topic, as well as hosting 2 top podcasts and a radio show. So a lot going on there. I've been very open with my own struggles with anxiety over the years, and it's one of the reasons that the discussion on mental health is so important to me. So I'm super excited to delve into this conversation and learn more about Anna's thoughts on it. So welcome, Anna. How are you doing?
Oh, Simon, I know you've had Paul and Tom on, and they've said the same about it's probably the best introduction I've ever heard.
Oh,
ever.
That's nice.
So thank you very, very. I was listening to you go, oh my God, bloody hell. This old bird's, been wafting around a long old time, but you know what? Yeah, it's so nice to see you, buddy. And we met on Celebs Go Dating, actually. Not that you were on it, but you were.
I wasn't dating.
No,
yeah.
You weren't dating. You were. We were doing a toothpaste commercial. And it was we all very much took to you straight away, and
that's very sweet.
I think you're very much part of our family as we are yours, I hope. So yeah, thanks for having me on the pod.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, no, I know it's weird. I didn't have any inhibitions in reaching out to you guys to get you on the podcast, because I did feel that we were only together for a day for the shoot, but I immediately felt a connection with all 3 of you, which is really, really interesting, because we actually did 3 other days. We did a few other Channel 4 based shows on this toothbrush ad, but it was the day that I did with you guys that really I really felt a connection with all of you, and you're all very different as well, which is fascinating, but you all seem to be best friends.
We are very, very close. Yeah, we we don't see each other much, obviously, when we're out of filming. Well, we haven't been able to because of lockdowns, and Paul lives in the States a lot of the time, although he's back in the UK now, which is great, and Tom's in London. I'm out in the sticks in Hertfordshire, but yeah, we are. It's as you know, obviously saw when we met, it's sometimes you just click with people and sometimes you don't. And I would say the same for you, actually. One of the very sort of core things about Paul, Tom and I is that we are people. We're all about rapport. And it's just naturally in us. We're naturally curious people. We naturally want to get to know people. I would say we're all naturally very warm people. And we just gel. And I think, honestly, Paul and Tom are my 2 other brothers. I have 2 real brothers, but Paul and Tom are my other brothers. And they're very naughty. They're very naughty, Simon.
They're troublemakers.
They play too many pranks. Paul is an absolute killer prankster, and he gets me every time. That guy could bring on a ruddy panic attack. He just absolutely, honestly, one of his absolute classics was we were doing the Celebs Go. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. We were doing the Celebs Go Dating press launch of the series before last, because we couldn't have one for the mansion because of COVID. But we were doing the press launch, and him and Alison Hammond, who was on that series. That's the series I think we met. We were having the press launch, and I was standing there in the middle of this bar, this swanky bar in London, and I was like, oh, what's that smell? Well, basically, the little bugger had dropped a fart bomb, like a spray. He'd sprayed this fart spray around me. So basically, and my agent was standing next to me. She literally was like, oh my God. So basically, the little sod had dropped this fart spray, and him and Alison Hammond were in on it together. And it was right, and brilliant. It was literally right by my feet. And I could see he nearly died with laughing so hard. It was probably the most funny moment ever, honestly. He's such a sod. He does it all the time.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I think the other thing that I noticed about all of you, which is a characteristic that I really value, is that there's so much honesty with all of you. Like none of you you're all like celebrities on TV. Like you could be excused for being quite sort of pompous or up yourself or something like that. But there's just a real raw naturalness and self-objectivity and honesty about all of you, where there's just no barrier. And this was the thing, like me and Tom were stuck on a sofa for like an hour, just like chatting, complete randomness, like, but just real, but actually quite. And again, me and Paul got stuck waiting for half an hour or so, and we got into a really deep conversation. I can't remember exactly what it was now, but it's not often that you meet random people like on a TV set and get into really deep conversations within like half an hour.
And I think this is it. I mean, I'm pretty sure production, pull their hair out with us, because often when we do the agency interactions on Celebs Go Dating, or it's Tom, Paul and I, and those are our favourite scenes. Like, we love those moments when they're called morning at the agency, when we get, because and some people ask, they say, was it scripted? Like, no, absolutely not. Like, everything you see is what we do. But obviously we're given pointers on what they want to film. So they'll go, right, today, all right now, can you go in and we're just going to film you guys setting up for the day. And those are our favourite scenes, because it's just banter. And I think I've never met two people, this is in and out of TV, I really do consider myself to be so fortunate, because you don't know whether you're going to gel with people. But with Paul and Tom, I've not only got friends for life, I consider them family, really. But, I have two colleagues where we are all on the same page, and we are, we like a laugh, but we can be really serious. And the main thing that we have with us as well is that we really do take our job seriously. We really value being given the opportunity to do it. We want to do something important with the job. Celebs Go Dating is a entertainment show, it's a dating show, and that's what and Rob Beckett makes it, with his voiceover. We all get with Rob as well, by the way, we just don't see Rob. But actually, we all Paul and I in particular, when we came on, obviously because we are the second sort of pairing that have come onto the show, we really wanted to take the therapy side of things and coaching side of things into a really good place where people could actually see the value in it, not just laugh at the funnier sides of things, and we love it. And actually, you said that about celebrities, and it's a term that I always probably cringe at, because I'm probably quite self-deprecating, and I'd say the same with the boys. But I think none of us do telly to be famous. It's not why we're there. And I think that's also really key. I think if one of us was primary reason that we wanted to be on the show was to be famous, or to have a following or whatever, then I don't think the relationship would work quite as well as it does. The fact that we do the job because we love the job, and actually all three of us really, particularly Paul, actually really shy away from the more glossier aspects of telly. We're rubbish at going out for dudes. We have to be dragged out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the relationship between the three of you is probably the reason why the show's been so successful.
Thank you.
And I think that whole piece around promoting the benefits of therapy is such an important topic. There's been a few guests on the show, Jim Chapman and Matt Willis specifically, and also Dan Morissette, quite a lot of them, most of them actually, who have accounted therapy as one of the most important things they've ever done in their lives. Jim Chapman said that it saved his life.
Yep.
And
me.
It's really, yeah, and it's an amazing thing that so many people shy away from it. And we referenced it before. I think it's like going to the gym. Like, you don't necessarily have to be in a critical position to need to reach out to a therapist, in the same way that you don't need to be training for a marathon to start working out. Like, you want to be flexing those muscles all the time, so that as and when something difficult does present itself, you're in a stronger position. Now, I say all this, but I've been talking about going to therapy for the last year, and I still haven't done it. So I'm really talking to myself here.
Mind you do a podcast, and I think doing a podcast is a real active form of therapy, because it's talking, it's sharing, it's taking that space and that time to just be with your thoughts and to articulate them. So actually, I do think that podcasting is a bit of a form of therapy. I do one of my podcast, Breaking Mum and Dad, I'm doing with my husband at the moment. And we found it being a brilliant form of couples therapy. And we've had couples therapy. And we were saying the same thing. Everyone should just do a podcast because it's a really good opportunity. But yeah, I would say the same as some of your other guests. You know, therapy for me, it saved my life. It certainly changed my life, and it changed my life all for the better. I was in an absolutely crippling way in my early mid-20s. And I was presenting at the time kids telly. It was a really popular show. It was network telly. It was ITV Saturday morning. You know, it was kind of the Holy Grail. And I was in a really rubbish relationship at the time. I really wasn't looking after myself mentally, mainly actually, as well as physically, but mainly mentally. And I think, you know, this is 15 years ago now. You know, I know because this is the reason why I've become such a campaigner for mental health. You know, there wasn't any empathy or sympathy or understanding or a willingness to want to learn about mental health. It was very much, you know, whisper behind you, you know, one hand, oh, eek, you know, someone's having a bit of a time. Oh, they're on antidepressants. That might, you know, it was all very, very heaped in stigma. And when I had an emotional breakdown, which was characterized of months and months and months of panic attacks, which anyone that's had panic attacks will know how awful they feel. And many people get admitted to A&E because they think they're dying, they think they're having a heart attack, but actually it's a panic attack. That's how severe they can feel. And this is why I always say the link between mental health and physical health is so strong, because when you are suffering with ill mental health, it can feel extremely physical. And for me, it was debilitating. I couldn't eat. I was losing weight. I couldn't sleep. I had, you know, chronic insomnia. My panic disorder, which was subsequently diagnosed, was raging. I mean, these panic attacks were absolute whoppers, and they kept coming thick and fast.
How did they present themselves? How did the panic attacks actually come out in physical form, or was it all internal?
It's a great question, actually, because I'm going to take myself back there now, actually. And so for me, a panic attack, you kind of get it's like a little warning sign. It's like when a car engine is, you've got like 5-10 miles before you need to fill up, and it starts to go ding, ding, ding. And for me, because it's a great question, actually, Simon, because panic attacks are characterized in so many different ways, and you may feel one or none or all of a myriad of symptoms. But for me, mine are very, very physical, in the sense that I feel this sort of warm buzz in my chest. So it sort of feels like my chest is being constricted. It's like there's a band around it, sort of constricting it. And then that will then affect my breathing. And then obviously if you don't breathe properly, you're going to feel lightheaded, you know, and everything starts to have this trickle effect. I get very sweaty hands. This is not a sexy symptom, but I need the loo. The other end, you know, and that's also a really embarrassing situation, because if you are in a situation where your bowels are going, and that's also a very, very common physiological side effect of anxiety and panic, because it's inbuilt in it. It's your body ejecting everything. It's fight or flight. Exactly. That's why we sweat, we puke. Some people do. You need the loo. But also when you're in that situation in a live TV studio, for example, and suddenly the fight or flight's kicked in, and your bowels are about to go, you know, it creates even more panic, because then you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, what if I literally crap myself in public? You know, this is awful. And you know, we could all have a little snigger about it, and we should. I think we should always try and humanize and find the humor where possible in our lowest moments. But it's a very, very real feeling, and it's very, very debilitating. So for me, this would, and then this panic, it would almost sort of shoot up into my neck like this sort of hot lava, like a hot poker. And then I would say the mental distortions would then kick in, which is the fight or flight. I needed to get the hell out of there. You know, it was very much rabbit in headlights. I needed to be anywhere but where I was. But obviously that isn't quite, it's a simple thing to do. So if you're feeling trapped, or you can't, like a lot of people say it's about in meetings or appraisals or in theatres or on trains. When you are physically constrained, i.e. you can't just get up and run out because everyone's going to notice, that's when it can exacerbate even more. And for me, that is when the panic used to exacerbate even more, is if I couldn't get away from it. Now, what I've subsequently learned is don't fight it, just allow the panic attack to happen, because once it's in motion, it's just let it run out of steam. And I always liken it to a toddler tantrum. We've got kids. Congrats, by the way, on baby number 2.
Thank you.
But it's like a toddler when they're in full tantrum mode, and our son can do this. My son can do this. When he's in his real paddy, there's no amount of scolding or time out step or anything in that moment that's going to work. He just has to run out of steam, and then we'll work on the rehabilitation side of it. It's the same with the panic attack. And I learned to get myself into a safe space, which for me was a toilet cubicle. You can normally find an excuse yourself to go to the loo. And I would sit on the loo, I'd ground myself, my feet on the floor, I'd anchor myself, I'd concentrate on the back of the toilet cubicle door, and I would get my breathing under control. But for me, and I'm sort of compressing an extremely long story, but over 8 months, all these symptoms, and then I became I had very obsessive compulsive behaviours were kicking in with my work. I was doing that whole sort of tapping thing, and I needed to have a certain colour pen to write on a piece of paper, otherwise the day was going to be ruined. Very obsessive compulsive. I had to go to bed at a certain time, otherwise then, blah, blah, blah. So all these things just absolutely spiraled until, going back to the car analogy, I ran out of gas and I wasn't sleeping. The relationship was very psychologically manipulative and abusive. And I was only 25, 26, and I imploded. I went into work one day after several days of no sleep, and it took a kindly word from a colleague who just took that moment to, ask me if I was okay, and genuinely wanting to know the answer. And that was it. I was, that was my window. I talk about with mental health in particular. It is about that window of because you feel so vulnerable and you're so worried about people's opinions and. I speak for myself, looking a fool. I didn't want to look a fool, or I didn't want to be the weak link in my team. Yeah, exactly. But I needed help, and I said, I just need help. And actually, for me, when I asked for help, the help came thick and fast. And then I felt like a bit of a wally for not asking for help sooner.
It's often the way, isn't it? When you actually reach out, people are normally there for you. Because
you become a great actress.
Yeah, exactly. How did that lead to you getting into your own journey and pathway with therapy and coaching and even the NLP stuff?
Yeah, so I actually still can't remember why what was the actual linchpin for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Because it's been that long now. But I was starting to read up. I think, like everything, I think you start to become fascinated in things, and if you have a natural interest, you want to know more. And so when I was signed off work basically with a mental breakdown, which again, I felt so dreadful about it, because I thought, God, I'm 26 years old with a job of my dreams. I'm on national telly and I've had a bloody emotional breakdown. And a lot of my recovery was just giving myself a goddamn break. And I think this is again another thing with mental health is we kind of sort of pigeonhole ourselves with and measure ourselves with how bad must we be feeling, or how bad must our story be for us to have permission to feel rubbish, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I always say this to people, I say this to clients, no one asks to feel how they feel, you just do, and there shouldn't be any blame or judgment attached to that. But I saw a fantastic doctor, consultant psychiatrist, who I'd known about, who was particularly good with anxiety disorders, and I went to see him in this sort of absolute heightened state of, breakdown. And he was amazing. And I will never forget it. I remember going into his office, sitting down on this chair. He'd obviously taken one look at my body language and just seen this is a highly stressed individual. Sat on the edge of the chair, wringing my hands, jittery, bottom lip wobbling. And, he asked me why I was there, and I just tried to explain to him in as many words as I could, because again, it's hard to sometimes explain how we're feeling if we don't know what we're feeling, or, so I just explained it to him, and he said, look, whatever you tell me, I'm not going to think you're weird. I'm not going to think you're, anything other than you. Just tell me how you're feeling, even if it sounds strange. So I was sort of telling him all these strange, but I only like a yellow highlighter pen, when I'm doing a script, because you feel like an absolute wally. And sometimes I think about, doing this with my car in case, and this is why it got so bad that I was, I used to fantasize fleetingly in the car that if I just nudged the steering wheel, a little bit, and I had a little crash into the central reservation on my A road, maybe I'd do enough sort of physical damage, like break a couple of legs or something, that it would give me kind of a free pass. I know, and that's how bad it can feel.
Scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and particularly back then when no one took it seriously. If you said you had mental health issues, oh my God, people would think you needed to be going into a secure unit, and it's so wrong, because like physical health, mental health, it's such as a wide spectrum. Yeah, of course, there's severe mental health, postpartum psychosis, schizophrenia, there's all those kind of, conditions there, which again can be managed, perfectly well. But also at the top end, you've got low mood, you've got stress, and that's where it can start. So he was amazing. I went to see him. I was seeing him twice a week, initially for the first 4 weeks. I went onto some medication to help just give my brain a rest. So he put me on an SSRI, which, again, I had all this stigma about being on a pill. Well, now I say to people, look, you know what? If you're asthmatic, you take an inhaler. If you're diabetic, you take diabetes medication. A friend of mine calls it, he refers to it as one of his vitamins. It's as important to him as taking his daily vitamin D supplement or whatever. It helps. And I do have low serotonin, the happy hormone. And I do have SAD. It turns out, seasonal affective disorder, because it's always quite recurrent. I have to work especially hard once autumn kicks in, just to keep myself buoyed. But he was amazing, and my world and my eyes were open to the world of therapy. And I came from a family that, are very open and very supportive, but probably like a lot of families, were a bit sniffy about talking about your feelings. British stiff upper lip, you don't talk about your feelings. So I didn't really know how to. And pardon me, he used such a combination of therapies alongside this short-term medication. I also was on a benzodiazepine, Xanax, just to give me some rest, because how can you start to recover if you're so sleep deprived, and build up your mental resilience? And he used a whole range of therapy techniques, including hypnosis, which I'm a huge fan of for change work, NLP, EFT, tapping techniques, all kinds of things. And he's also quite spiritual, which I am. And again, I think this comes down to when you have a coach or a therapist, it's such a personal relationship. And some people get really put off by therapy because their first therapist hasn't gelled with them. And I always encourage people to try someone else, because it is really unique. Even my own psychiatrist, a close family member, was also having a time of difficulty, and didn't gel with him, and it just didn't have the same sort of values really that were aligning with the type of therapy. So
I think that's one of the reasons that's put me off making the jump, is I've done a load of research and I'm like, oh, that person doesn't seem quite right. And there's sort of a decision paralysis going on, where I probably just need to make the first jump and then see how it goes.
Yeah, I would say that, and I know, and I know a lot of therapists now, as peers, and I can definitely pick out some that, for me, I wouldn't probably like their style. Doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about, but everyone has got a different style and also a different level of empathy, and their own lived experience often as well. So I would say try again. We've had my husband and I, before we got married, we had a couples counsellor, who was amazing, and I'm a huge fan of couples therapy. And, my God, this, she's couldn't be more different from my approach. She's very quite headmistress, as a mediator should be, but she's, she's very disciplined with her time. She's very matter of fact. She will offer up advice, which often a lot of counsellors don't. But you know what? It worked for us. In that scenario, it worked for us. Would it have worked for me when I was having a breakdown? Absolutely not. I would have thought she was horrible. I wouldn't have gelled with her. So I think you have to think about where you are in your head, what you need. Do you need nurturing? Do you need sympathy and empathy? Do you need a softly approach? Or do you need some tough love, And I think finding your therapist based on what your needs are and not being afraid of saying, you know what, this isn't working for me. And I think, and I speak for myself as a coach, one of our fundamental principles and teachings is to recognize when a client isn't getting the best from you as a coach. We're all human, we all, we're very non-judgmental, by our training. But at the same time, we're all human, and it can, some clients will pose more challenges than others might. For example, if I had a gentleman in that, had admitted to, being untoward towards his partner, for example, because I have lived experience of that, I may find that quite difficult to work with that client. So it's recognizing it in yourself and going, for me, I'm going to pass you over to someone else, and I think that's really important. It's about being authentic and honest with your therapist, to be honest. You have to be, and they have to be to you.
Absolutely. And on that NLP piece, can you just, for the listeners that maybe haven't heard of it before, just give us a little bit of an overview on what it is and what the benefits are of it, if there's any sort of tools that our listeners can use to help with mood and that sort of thing. I know that I'm very interested in it, and I don't know very much about it. I recently bought a book, which is on my standard bookshelf of books that I'm waiting to read, which is at about 30 right now. But it's
I know, I'm the same. Never get time.
I know, but it's something that a lot of really high performing individuals, I think, are very interested in, and so that interests me as well. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so can't speak. Neuro-linguistic programming. So it has many similar traits. It's a form of therapy, psychodynamic therapy, and it's very similar to CBT, which is the more widely recognized one, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the NHS go-to. They're very, very closely linked. CBT is fantastic. I think, and I think the way I would differentiate them both, because they really do overlap, I'd say CBT is particularly good with anxiety disorders, and traumas or things where you're sort of stuck from learned behavior. And it's all about changing your thought patterns. It's all about trying to reframe how you think about things. So it can be very, very effective. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's great. For me, though, NLP, I think, is a lot more in depth, and which is why I prefer it. So the way I would differentiate, I think NLP, it's more working on your filter system. It's working on your feelings and your sensory acuity. Now, what really drew me into NLP is because it really, essentially it's about to bring about change. That is exactly what it is. It's about looking at our limiting beliefs. It's about working out how we process information, how that then turns into our behaviors and our thought processes and our achievements. Is it what is serving us well and what isn't serving us well? It's all about our filter systems. But NLP for me, it's one of the main things that it works on are your five senses. Your representational system, it's called. So it's everything we think, do, our behavior is all based on how we filter that information through our five senses. Okay, through what we see, through what we hear, through what we touch. Kinesthetic, but obviously it's inside. What we can taste and smell. And these all have an enormous emphasis on our memories, on our subconscious memories, which obviously we bury and they kind of can come up and when we least expect it and can present with really unhelpful behavior. How many of us can really identify? And that's why I love NLP, because it really works on learning about yourself, what drives you, what motivates you, what are your challenging points, what are your sticking points. And like I say, it does cross over a lot with CBT, but for me, it's more about a more in-depth way to make those changes. And one of my favorite techniques actually is so we work in NLP a lot with association and disassociation. So NLP really crosses over as well with hypnosis, hypnotherapy. And actually I did do, as part of my training several years ago, I did do a module on hypnotherapy, and I'm still waiting to do the full qualification, actually, because I find it incredible for change work. You know, it's so different to the perception that people have of, you know, people going in trance and then being made to be a chicken. You know, it's the most incredible, it's the most incredible way to reframe memories and association and disassociation. So when you are associated, you are experiencing something in your own body, looking out through your own eyes. Okay. So right now I am associated. Okay. I'm looking at you, Simon. You know, I'm associated. I'm experiencing this. So if I'm associated, I am now tapping into all of my senses to see how I'm feeling. You know, am I holding any tension, any confusion, any frustration, any anxiety? You know, how am I feeling about this at the moment? You know, and then what we do with that, so we can really experience that to its, you know, in a really concentrated way. So when we go about change work, we then disassociate, which is when we literally step away into a third person. And we do this a lot with phobia cures, actually. NLP really can be very helpful when it comes to phobia cures. That's where it crosses over a bit to hypnotherapy. So when you disassociate, you're then, for example, standing in the corner of your room, okay, and you are then looking at yourself from a distance vantage point. So if I were to do that right now, and often we do that by closing our eyes, if I were to look at, you know, stand in the corner, or often it's quite good to sort of float in the top corner of the room and look down and view that scenario, view what, and talk to yourself. What are you seeing? What is that behavior? What is that physiology? You know, how do I look? Do I look confident? Do I look embarrassed? Do I look shy? You know, am I fidgeting? Do I, you know, and how we do that is we work. The new behavior generator, I think, is fantastic for when you want to recreate or create a desired state. So if, for example, so let's say, for example, I was coming on this podcast today and I was feeling really nervous, de-skilled, or whatever it may be. How you use that technique before you go into any of those scenarios is to then change your behavior, tweak your behavior. And from that disassociated distance vantage point, you look at what the behavior currently is. Oh yeah, she's, you know, her shoulders are down, she's fidgeting, she's got this, right. So then you correct it. So and then you can bring in modeling. Modeling is when you take attributes of people that demonstrate behaviors that you want to emulate, successful behaviors. So I might go, right, she needs to sit up straight. You know, she perhaps needs to tie her hair back so she stops fidgeting with her hair. She perhaps needs to put some shoes on so she feels more grounded and not wearing her slippers, because wearing her slippers might make, I am wearing my slippers, but might make
I'm
her
barefoot,
feel a little,
don't worry.
I love it, but might make her feel a bit more less professional. So she might feel a bit more confident if she's wearing heels. And what you do is, and then you put yourself back into that associated position where you're viewing it back out through your own eyes again, and you embrace that new behavior, and you make those tweaks and those changes. So it's quite a complex thing, but actually when you're working with an NLP coach, I find, and my God, my most favorite thing ever was training and studying it. And so much so I keep going on to do like refreshers, and I have my monthly supervisions, because I just find it so fascinating, especially when you're with one of the big trainers as well. It's like Tony Robbins, your mind is blown. So it's a really great therapy to study, and you can read up on it, and it's quite, Tony Robbins is one of the, you know, the most famous NLP practitioners. It's really what he does. You know, if you read any of his, you know, books, then that's really what it is. But it's a fascinating process. But it's just tapping in with your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. And for me, it's been an absolute game changer. I've become a better person. I've become a better mother, a better wife, a better friend, and I've had a better career.
It's brilliant. It's fascinating. Really, really interesting. I mean, you literally gave me goosebumps there, just hearing you, because I was doing it as you were saying it, and I was like, oh, that's a really powerful tool. I can really see how, especially for people who have got a phobia of public speaking, how it could be so powerful in that sort of scenario. I think a lot of the times I'm really interested by the whole interplay between physical activity and emotional state in both directions. So like how you control your body controls your mind, but then also how your mind controls your body, as you mentioned before with panic attacks, like the mind leading to physical expressions of your internal emotions. I think that whole interplay is so interesting.
I completely agree. It fascinates me. And I think whenever I see anyone I think this is why I have just such a natural empathy now. And I think my legacy, you know, in life is really just trying to normalize and help people with those thoughts and feelings, because they can be all consuming. And I think you're absolutely spot on when you say the interplay with physical, because our thoughts, can change everything about our physical behavior. People that are, particularly like post-pandemic, post-lockdown, if I dare, wish that we are coming out of it now. But, a lot of people are feeling anxious about coming out. So then that changes their physical behavior. They don't want to go out anymore. So they become quite insular, and they might not want to go to work anymore. It might have an effect on their job. It might, and I think that's why I'm so pro really tapping in to your thoughts and your feelings, and actually putting some real time and effort and TLC into asking yourself, which is why mindfulness is a fascinating practice. Actually, mindfulness and meditation has been absolutely proven now. I did a really interesting forum summit last year, called the Brain Forum, with a whole load of neuroscientists from around the world, and psychiatrists and psychologists. And meditation and mindfulness has now been proven to be one of the most effective ways to manage anxiety disorders and depressive disorders. And it's really, really not hard, in the sense that it's so simple in just being in the present and taking time off. And I think as life is evolving, it's amazing that we're so connected, but we're too connected too much of the time. And I think we forget that. I think we run away with everything so much. We really forget to actually pause and give ourselves that time and space. And it's so important for our mental well-being.
Absolutely. And I think there seems to be like an expectation that our minds should be they should always be performing at top level, always be performing correctly, and we don't need to put any effort into them to achieve that state. And I think that's the big issue. Certainly for me, I know if I don't do my meditation each day, like I've been so busy recently with all this Dragon's Den stuff coming up, and I've let my practices slide a little bit, where I've had to like get work done to certain deadlines, and it really affects me. I'm like, why am I in such a bad mood? And then I'm like, I haven't meditated for like the last 3 days. That's clearly what it is. It's so
but that's
powerful.
Great, because you recognize that. And I'm the same. My God, I spend every day preaching it. I try and practice it, but I'm like you, I think. But again, that's just being human. And same thing. Sometimes I'm like, God, I'm just so really moody. I'm a bit crotchety with the kids more than usual. And then when I really break it down, I'm like, did I have a proper walk today, or did I just have a quick 3 minutes round the block and, almost like a tick list? You can't cheat it. And I think this is the thing. You just can't cheat it. You have to put in and it's hard, and you do have to diarize it, but you have to give it the same priority and emphasis as in your mental health and your well-being, your emotional well-being, as you would, going to a dentist, to get your teeth. But it's true. But if your teeth were busted, you wouldn't just sit there and go, oh, I'll just give it 5 seconds and pay, Simon half the cost to do half the job. You just wouldn't do it. You go full out because you want to look your best, because you feel your best. And it's the same thing. If you're cheating yourself by only giving yourself 5 minutes of meditation, or you're forgetting, you're not going to be at your optimum best. And that's a choice you have to make, and we can all make it. I'm the same. I love positive affirmations in the morning. I did them this morning, actually. I forgot yesterday, and it does have an effect. Like it completely flips my day into a good start. I sound like I'm like in the Sound of Music, but every morning I like fling open my window, because the reason why I was so vehement about buying the house that I'm in right now is its view. It has the most beautiful view. And so every morning I like to remind myself on how I feel fortunate that I'm in this home that has a lot of problems at the moment, because it's an old house. But to keep me in that positive, as opposed to, oh my God, this house is rubbish. Oh my God, the house needs so much doing to it. I'm like, remind myself on the house. I love this house. Open the window. I take deep breaths and I do my positive affirmations. Thank you, the fact that we own this lovely home. It's a home where my family feels safe, and it sets you up for the day, as opposed to, oh my God, the bog's broken again. It changes your whole mind. Mind you, the bog being broken is an issue. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally preaching to the converted there, Anna, because I'm exactly the same. As soon as I wake up, the first thing I do is just get some water down me, and then do a gratitude. As soon as my feet touch the floor, like that's the moment, specifically that's the moment, I do like a couple of like just gratitude practices, which is just saying thank you for stupid stuff, like I can hear the birds tweeting outside, or I'm healthy and all of my limbs work. Just anything. It can be really, really small, or it can be really massive, like thank you that all my family are healthy. But it's such a powerful way to start the day, and it's free and it's so easy, and it's impossible to forget to do it, because if you the key thing I think with all this stuff, same with meditation, same with exercise, is consistency is absolutely everything. It doesn't. I say this to myself all the time on my Peloton bike. If I'm doing a really rubbish job, I'm like, you're here, you're doing it. You can't smash it every day. Like at least you're here, you've clipped in, and you're getting the job done. And I think that's the absolute core mantra for anything that's sort of positive for your mental health.
You can always tweak something positive out, and it's always quite a good measure, actually. If I've got a client who when I say give me 3 things that you're grateful for today, be positive about, and I think the tendency, and you hit the nail on the head there, the tendency is to think big. Think small, because it's actually the small things that make all the difference. Now, you'll know this with a little one. I mean, I've got my daughter who's 16 months and teething, but I've had a couple of fun times, but I've had a couple of shocking nights sleep with her, and and that can, funny enough, lack of sleep is a massive mental is an ill mental health trigger for me, actually. Massive. But you know what, exactly like you say, is my feet hit the floor in the morning. Now I could be, oh my god, I'm so tired, the baby had me up between 1 and 4 a.m, or, and this is what I do, you can flip it to that positive. And now you might have to be clutching at straws, but it works. I then say, I'm grateful that I got some sleep, because I could have had none. But I actually did sleep, and I'm grateful for the sleep I did get. So if you're flipping it and you're focusing it, my favourite quote is, if you can, or if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. And it's so true. Yeah. So true.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that brings us on quite nicely to the whole parenting piece, because I've obviously got a 8-week-old right now, and sleep is not something that I'm able to control. And I think that's a really interesting discussion point, because when you have a kid, you can't sleep. Like, it's not, you can't be like, right, I'm going to get my 9 hours tonight because that's what I know what I need to be like mentally fit. It's like, no, you literally can't. And you've written a whole book on this, haven't you? Breaking Mum and Dad, and that's obviously the name of your podcast as well. So what led to you sort of diving into that arena, which is obviously acutely relevant for me right now, so I'm asking from a selfish point of view.
No, you ask away, my friend. No, because I'd managed my mental health. I'd managed my anxiety. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder back in the day when I'd had that breakdown, and it was managed really well. I'd come off medication. I had good psychological support, which I actively looked into and took on. I was also then training and qualifying in my own mental health practices, which also really helped. It sort of served as self-help, really. But then I got pregnant, and I didn't realize quite how bad perinatal anxiety and postnatal anxiety, postnatal depression could be. And so when I was pregnant with my son Enzo 4.5 years ago, I put it down to hormones at the time, but actually it was my anxiety disorder that was raging out of control, and it wasn't flagged. Not by me, not by any medical professionals. And then when I had my son, which was a pretty grotty birth, I had dreadful postnatal depression and postnatal anxiety. And I had to seek help very, very quickly for that, because we were in the trenches. We were feeling very dark at that point. And then it sort of opened up this whole world for me of parenting. And I was thinking, my God, like, when I reached out and started talking about it and realized that so many people are also experiencing the same thing, I just think, and this is what I think, parenting is wonderful. Having a baby is wonderful. And so many people have such a great experience with it. And I think that is to be absolutely applauded. I really, really do. But it just became really apparent to me that lots of people also felt like I did. And that was a bit of a failure, because I wasn't really enjoying parenting, because my mental health was shot to smithereens. And I sort of embarked on this journey, really, to try and understand postnatal mental health for mums, for dads, and what that was like. And it sort of uncovered lots of really quite upsetting things, really, how much people were struggling. And then there's this cathartism of everyone going, oh, it's not just me, then that's okay then. So that's sort of, and that's where Breaking Mum and Dad came from. It's like, it's okay. And I think my tagline for that book is, it's okay to not love it all the time, because you won't. And when you're sleep deprived, as you say, Simon, it's hard to enjoy anything. In fact, if anything, you can go the opposite, where you can resent that your children for making you feel tired. And certainly as a mother, having given birth and being pretty battered and bruised after it, there was definitely a point of, oh my God, like what's happened to me? Like, who am I? I don't know. Identity loss, all of that, was going on. So common. And then sleep is kind of, a massive trigger as well. And I think my husband and I talk about this, we devised our own sort of pattern to ensure that we both got sleep, because we knew that literally it was game over if I didn't get my sleep. So I don't know how you and your wife do it, but we had shift patterns of sleep. So I would do hang on, I'm trying to think where we were now. That sort of so I would go to sleep at like 7, 8 p.m. at night. And then I don't know if you're breastfeeding, not you personally, but you're doing bottle. You're expressing at all?
Yeah.
So, okay. So you can do a bottle feed?
Yeah.
Oh, fine. So I would do the same. So I would go to sleep at 8 o'clock in the evening, and my husband would then stay. He's quite happy to watch, films and stuff. He would stay up and then do like the 11 o'clock feed. And then he'd come to bed. So, so I would then sleep from like 8 p.m. right through until like the 3 a.m. feed. Mm-hmm. And then that was like, no one's interrupting me. This is my time. He would then do that stint, and then he'd go to bed at like midnight and sleep all the way through to 6, 7, because I then like get up in the middle of the night and do the feed. And for us, that actually was our saving grace, and we got into this rhythm. Terribly antisocial, but it doesn't last forever.
That was going to be my question, because one of the big things I think with parenting is that your attention is drawn away from the relationship. And with exactly what you described there, like that shift pattern was like a necessary structure that you guys had to put in place.
It's a passion killer.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like the natural outcome of that is that you don't have any time for intimacy, don't have any time for connecting with each other, and that then can lead to other issues that then come full circle. So it's such a difficult time. And I know for Megs, my wife especially, anytime where she's like really struggling, she feels guilty for not, as you say, for not being like, this is the best experience of my whole life ever, and everything is just glowing and perfect. And I think that's got to be just destroyed, that thought process, because it's so harmful for people's mental health.
It's so harmful, because you just said there the G word, guilt. I think guilt, particularly when it comes to parenting, I think it's such an unnecessary and unhelpful emotion to feel.
I always say that, yeah. It's a complete waste of time.
A waste of time and emotion, isn't it? And I think also, if you're feeling guilty, guess what? It means you care. So that's a good thing. And I think if you have that fleeting moment, recognize it, go, okay, I feel a bit guilty. Okay, that's good, because it shows I care. And now I'm going to get rid of that guilt, because you then got to live in the moment. I mean, my God, honestly, anyone that can survive on sleep deprivation, having a pretty broken body, broken boobs if you're breastfeeding, with your relationship, you're going to start niggling at each other and start getting, ratty with each other. For anyone to then sit there and go, oh my God, this is the most wonderful experience. If they do, that's bloody amazing.
Yeah, get on them.
Yeah, but for a lot of people, it's not, and my God, my husband and I absolutely, we still have it now. Like if we've had a crappy night with the kids, we look at each other and we're like, God, it's hard, isn't it? But you know what? It's. I think what's important about it, and it's like you and your wife, it's taking those moments to actually recognize it, name it, and go, do you know what? It's really freaking hard right now. And right now, I don't like my child. I love my child, but I don't like them right now. And you can say that and feel that, because then you say,
guilt-free.
Guilt-free. And then go, right, what are we going to do about it? And my husband and I do it. We sit, we have our moments, and then we have a flipping good laugh about it. One of the kids will do something which, is sweet, and we go, but then what we do is we do try and carve out that time. I think in the early newborn phases, it's really hard to carve out any time, if I'm honest with you. But I think to keep reminding yourselves that this is just a phase. It is a phase, and to keep your relationship up there and keep recognizing and checking in with each other, saying, look, I know we haven't got much time for each other at the moment, but as long as we are making a concerted effort, that we will make sure we have time and make those plans. I mean, we got into a habit as well of asking my mum. She came over occasionally on a Saturday night and would do the night for us. And that was lovely, because we could then go to bed together and not have anything particularly romantic, but even just to get into bed together and have a cuddle and go to sleep together was lovely. Yeah, it's so important. And I think that's it. I think I'm fun enough. I'm writing my next book on dating and relationships, and I'm on this chapter really. And I think it's just keeping sight of your relationship, and that it will be challenged by children. But actually just keep going, keep that connection going, keep talking, because you do come through the other side.
Yeah, I think I heard Brené Brown talking about her relationship with her husband, and she's just an amazing person. For anyone who hasn't looked at her stuff, she's epic. But her and her husband have this thing where if they're struggling, they'll be like, they'll always communicate about how they're feeling, and they'll do it in a sort of a mathematical type of way. They'll be like, Brené will be like, I'm like a 20 today. Like I need you to cover me. Like I need some help here. And if the other person's like, oh, I'm an 80 out of 100, then it's like, okay, I can cover you because I'm an 80. If you're both 20s or like you're both 10s and just completely gone, then you're like, right, we need to like actually take some extreme action here in the short term to like balance this out. So do we need to lean on the grandparents? Do we need to get a babysitter in? Do we need to cancel a few of our work jobs or like focus more on us? Like,
exactly.
And I think that's a really interesting way to frame it and to be a bit more analytical about it. But Anna, listen, I know you've got to get off, so I just
we could talk for hours.
I've only asked you about 3 of the questions I had planned.
Let's do a follow-up.
We probably need to do a round 2 at some point. But the way I like to end every episode of this show is just to ask you this final question, which is, what is the one small change that you've made in your life that you wish you made earlier?
Oh, it's such a good question. I actually had an answer for you in this because I was prepping this and I was thinking, God, it is such a good question. It sounds really cliched, just to be kinder to myself. It sounds really cliched, and I think I'm a very driven person. I like to achieve. I like working. I like being a mum. But the one small change I've made is to just be kinder to myself and do a few more things just for me, guilt-free. So do you know one thing I do? Actually, this is a one small change. I have a massage every week. Every week. Brilliant. Now, some people, maybe once a fortnight actually, but and it was horrific during lockdown because I couldn't do it. But some people go, oh, Poncy, having a massage. And I'm like, do you know what? For me, that is my favorite thing in the world. I love spending my money on a massage because it's time for me. It feels good. I do mindfulness while I'm having my massage, and it really, really, it invigorates me. It re-energizes me. It relaxes me, and it gives me some complete switch off. So that is the one small change I've made, is to guilt-free invest in a weekly massage, and it's bloody brilliant. I love it. I'm definitely going to implement myself. You should. But too many people see those things as like a luxury, and they are. I'm not saying everyone can go out and afford a 50 quid massage every 5 minutes. I do appreciate that. Yeah. I do appreciate that. But even if you can have a nice hot bath and get one of the sort of back rollers or something, it's just that very notion of taking an hour off just for you, where everyone else can bugger off, and do something that feels nice. And for me, a massage feels lovely. I love it. I'm literally gonna go on Urban Massage now and get that booked in. Anna, thank you so much for your time. I absolutely love that chat, and I'll probably be hitting you up for some therapy recommendations after the call. But have a great day, and we'll get you on a round 2 someday soon. 100%. Thanks, Simon.